Dave Roberts almost didn't tell anyone. That was the part that made it land so hard when he finally did. Not the words themselves, though the words were enough. But the fact that he had been carrying them since the 7th inning. Through the final out. Through the handshakes on the field. Through the walk from the dugout to the tunnel to the manager's office where he sat alone for a few minutes before the reporters arrived. He had been carrying them the whole time. Turning them over. Sitting with them the way you sit with something that feels too private for a press conference but too important to keep entirely to yourself. And then a reporter asked the right question at the right moment and Roberts looked up and made a decision. He told them. Right before he left the mound, before he handed me the ball, Shohei looked at me and said, "If I can't do anything, I'll be ashamed." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. Those 7 words carried their own weight into every corner of that press conference room and pressed against the walls and sat in the silence that followed them like something alive. A manager who has spent decades in professional baseball. Who has stood on more mounds in more important moments than most people will ever see from any distance. Who has looked into the eyes of great players at difficult moments and learned to read what's there: relief, exhaustion, defiance, fear. Looked into Ohtani's eyes in that moment and saw something he hadn't expected. Shame. Not the presence of it. The terror of it. The specific, particular terror of a man who holds himself to a standard so private and so absolute that falling short of it, even slightly, even in a way no one else would notice, would feel like a kind of personal collapse. And then, 2 innings later, Shohei Ohtani stepped into the batter's box and hit a 2-run home run that won the game. It was the kind of inning that arrives without warning. The game had been tight in the way that meaningful games in May already feel like October, every pitch carrying slightly more weight than the calendar says it should, the crowd reading each count with an attention that belongs to a later month. Ohtani had been managing. Not dominating. Managing. The kind of pitching that requires more intelligence than electricity, working counts, changing speeds, making the lineup respect pitches he hadn't thrown yet by establishing the ones he had. It was working. Until the inning where it stopped working. 1 hit. Then another. A walk that he didn't want to give but the count forced. Suddenly the bases were occupied and the lineup was turning over toward the part that could hurt him, and the pitch count was at a number that made the decision inevitable even before Robert started walking. The stadium felt it before it saw it. The way a crowd can sense a manager leaving the dugout before he's fully visible, a shift in collective attention, a slight lean forward, the particular silence of 50,000 people watching something happen that they cannot control or predict. Roberts walked to the mound. He took the ball from Ohtani the way managers take balls from pitchers, with a hand on the shoulder, a few words, the small private ceremony of an ending. The kind of moment that gets photographed from 100 feet away but belongs entirely to the 2 people inside it. And that was when Ohtani said it. Not loudly. Not as a performance for the dugout or the crowd or the cameras that were certainly pointed at them. Quietly. Directly. The way Ohtani does almost everything, without decoration, without distance, with the specific economy of a man who means exactly what he says and nothing more. If I can't do anything, I'll be ashamed. Roberts heard it. Nodded. Took the ball. Walked back to the dugout. And carried those words through the rest of the game. He hadn't planned to share it. That was clear from the way it came out, not as an opening statement, not as a prepared narrative, but as an answer that arrived before he'd fully decided to give it. A reporter had asked about the mound visit. Routine question. The kind that gets asked after every pitching change in every press conference in every stadium in the country. What did you say to Ohtani when you took him out? Robert started to answer the way managers answer that question. Generally. Professionally. The language of in-game decisions and bullpen management and protecting a starter who has given you everything you're going to get from him tonight. And then he stopped. Something shifted in his expression. Small. Almost invisible. The look of a man changing his mind about something in real time, deciding that the professional answer and the honest answer are not the same answer, and choosing the honest one. I'll tell you something he said to me. And I want to be careful here because I think it's personal. But I also think people should know who this man is. The room adjusted. Reporters who had been half listening were suddenly fully present. Right before he gave me the ball, Shohei looked at me and said, "If I can't do anything, I'll be ashamed." He let it sit there for a moment before continuing. "Now. That's what I'm working with. That's what I'm managing every single day." A man who defines his own standard and holds himself to it so completely that leaving a baseball game, something that happens to every pitcher in this league, feels to him like a personal failure. His voice was steady but not casual. This wasn't a manager telling an amusing anecdote about his star player. This was something closer to testimony. I told him, "You gave us everything tonight. You put us in position to win. The rest is ours to finish." He paused. And then he went and finished it himself anyway. When Ohtani stepped into the batter's box in the 7th inning, he was no longer the pitcher. That part of the night was done. The mound was someone else's responsibility now. The bullpen had taken the handoff and held it, and the game was still where it needed to be, close enough that one swing could change everything. One swing. He worked the count with the same patience he brings to everything. Not passive patience, active, predatory patience. The kind that makes pitchers uncomfortable because it suggests that the hitter knows something they don't yet, that he's waiting for a specific moment that only he can see arriving. The pitcher made a decision. Whether it was the wrong decision or simply the inevitable one is the kind of question that gets answered differently depending on which dugout you're sitting in. He threw the pitch he threw. Ohtani's hand started. The sound of it was immediate and complete, the kind of contact that doesn't require watching the flight of the ball to understand what has happened. The crowd understood it before the ball cleared the wall. The pitcher understood it. Both dugouts understood it. 2 runs. Dodgers ahead. Ohtani rounded the bases the way he always does, without theater, without performance, with the quiet efficiency of a man completing a task he had assigned himself some time ago and is only now finishing. He touched home plate. His teammates met him. The stadium was as loud as stadiums get. And somewhere in the dugout, Dave Roberts was still holding those 7 words. "If I can't do anything, I'll be ashamed." American sports culture has a specific relationship with confidence. It celebrates the bold prediction. The guarantee. The athlete who stands in front of cameras before the biggest moment and says, "Watch what I'm about to do." There is a long and honored tradition in this country of the performative belief, the declaration of certainty that is itself part of the performance, that lifts the crowd and pressures the opponent and tells the world that this person has decided the outcome already. What Ohtani said on that mound was almost the opposite of that tradition. He didn't say he would be great. He didn't say he would come back and win the game. He said that if he couldn't contribute, if he left that mound without doing enough, he would carry the weight of that privately, internally, in a place that has nothing to do with cameras or crowds or the opinion of anyone in any press conference room. The shame he was talking about wasn't public shame. It was the specific, quiet shame of falling short of the standard you have set for yourself alone. The kind that exists independent of the scoreboard. The kind that doesn't go away when your team wins or when the reporters write kind things or when the highlight plays on loop. It was the shame of a man who came to this country carrying an idea of what he could be and has spent every year since making sure the distance between that idea and his reality stays as small as possible. Roberts understood that. He said so. Most players, when you take them out of a game, the calculation is about the team. About what's best for the bullpen. About matchups. And they accept it because they're professionals and they understand the game. He folded his hands on the table. With Shohei, the calculation is always also about him. About his standard. About what he believes he owes. Not to the organization. Not to the fans. To himself. And managing that, understanding that, is a completely different thing. By morning, the clip was everywhere. Not the home run clip, though that was everywhere too. The press conference clip. Roberts at the microphone, speaking carefully, choosing the honest answer over the professional one, sharing 7 words that Shohei Ohtani had said quietly on a baseball mound that were never meant for a press conference room. The reaction split almost immediately along two lines. The first was straightforward admiration. The story fit neatly into the existing Ohtani narrative, the relentlessness, the standards, the gap between how he appears from the outside and what is apparently happening on the inside at all times. People shared it. Added their own framing. Called it inspiring. Called it the reason he is what he is. The second reaction was quieter and more interesting. It came mostly from former players. Men who had spent careers in the same clubhouses and dugouts and mound visits that Ohtani now inhabits. And what they said, not all of them, but enough, was that the word shame carried more weight than the inspiring version of the story acknowledged. That kind of standard, they said, is not only fuel. It is also a fire that doesn't turn off. A man who feels ashamed for leaving a baseball game is a man who carries something heavy every single day. And the question of whether that weight makes you greater or costs you something, or both simultaneously, is not a question that gets answered in a single press conference. Roberts heard that conversation too. Someone put the question to him directly the following day. Is that standard sustainable? Is it healthy? He didn't dismiss it. He sat with it the way he'd sat with the words themselves. I think about that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But I also think, Shohei knows himself. He's been doing this long enough. The standard he holds himself to is his. Not mine to adjust. A pause. All I can do is make sure he knows that from where I'm standing, he has never once given me reason to feel anything but grateful. The Dodgers won the game. The bullpen held. The 2 runs were enough. The final out was recorded and the stadium released and the players shook hands and everything that needed to happen happened in the order it was supposed to happen. In the box score, Ohtani's night reads a certain way. Innings pitched. Hits allowed. Walks. Strikeouts. Then later in the batting line, 1 at-bat, 1 home run, 2 runs batted in. Clean numbers. The kind that fit inside databases and get compared against other numbers across other nights. They don't contain the mound visit. They don't contain the 7 words. They don't contain the expression on Robert's face when he decided to share them, that small, visible moment of choosing honesty over professionalism, of deciding that some things are too important to keep inside a manager's office. The numbers don't contain what Ohtani was actually carrying when he stepped into that batter's box 2 innings after handing over the ball. The private weight of a standard that only he can measure. The specific fear of a man who holds himself accountable to something deeper than any scoreboard. They just show the home run. 2 runs. Dodgers win. What it cost him to get there, what it always costs him to get there, that lives somewhere the numbers don't reach. In a press conference room where a manager almost kept a secret and then decided the world should know. In 7 quiet words spoken on a pitcher's mound to the only person close enough to hear them. If I can't do anything, I'll be ashamed.